Mom, I sent you money, the son reminded her. You promised to take care of it. I have a daughter who needs help. Marcus stared at his phone screen, reading Chloe's desperate text message for the third time, while his mother Dolores fumbled for excuses on the other end of their video call. His 22-year-old daughter needed $3,000 for emergency dental surgery after a car accident, and the money he'd sent to his mother 6 months ago for exactly this purpose had mysteriously vanished. Mom, I sent you money, Marcus reminded her, his voice tight with controlled frustration. You promised to take care of it. I have a daughter who needs help. Dolores's face on the screen shifted through a series of expressions: surprise, defensiveness, then a calculated innocence that Marcus recognized from his childhood. She claimed confusion about which money he meant, suggested that perhaps he'd forgotten about other expenses she'd covered, and implied that his memory of their arrangement might be faulty. But Marcus had screenshots of their text conversation from February when he transferred $5,000 to Dolores with explicit instructions to set it aside for Chloe's emergencies. His deployment to Germany had made direct financial support complicated, and he'd trusted his mother to act as a responsible intermediary for his daughter's needs. The irony was devastating. Marcus had been sending Dolores monthly support for years, ensuring she could maintain her Houston apartment and cover her expenses comfortably. In return, she'd agreed to help coordinate financial assistance for Chloe, who was working her way through college while living independently. Now, when Chloe faced her first real crisis, the safety net Marcus thought he'd provided had disappeared entirely. His daughter was in pain, unable to afford the dental work that would prevent permanent damage, while Dolores offered vague promises about figuring something out instead of accessing the funds that should have been waiting for exactly this situation. Marcus felt his carefully maintained composure beginning to crack as he realized his mother had betrayed not just his trust, but his daughter's welfare. The investigation into his mother's finances revealed a pattern of deception that made Marcus question every conversation they'd had over the past year. Dolores had used Chloe's emergency fund to cover leisure pursuits debts accumulated through online recreational facility, systematically draining the account while assuring Marcus that everything was properly managed. Bank records showed leisure center withdrawals totaling nearly $4,000, all made during the months when Dolores was supposedly safeguarding Chloe's future security. The remaining $1,000 had disappeared through a series of cash advances and ATM withdrawals that coincided with Dolores's weekly trips to the local tribal leisure center. Marcus's confrontation with his mother escalated into a brutal conversation about enablement and responsibility. Dolores defended her actions by claiming the recreational habits was stress relief, that she'd intended to replace the money before anyone noticed, and that Marcus's military salary meant he could easily send more funds for Chloe's emergency. The justifications revealed how completely Dolores had rationalized stealing from her own granddaughter. She seemed genuinely surprised that Marcus considered her spending problem more important than Chloe's urgent medical needs, as if the money had somehow belonged to her rather than being held in trust. Chloe's reaction to learning about her grandmother's betrayal was heartbreaking in its resignation. She admitted that Dolores had been borrowing small amounts from her for months, always with promises to repay that never materialized. The emergency fund theft was just the latest and largest violation in a pattern of financial manipulation that had been building for years. Marcus realized he'd been inadvertently funding his mother's financial irresponsibility while believing he was securing his daughter's future. His monthly support payments had enabled Dolores to gamble without facing immediate consequences, creating a cycle where his responsible planning subsidized her irresponsible choices. The betrayal cut deeper because it revealed how Dolores had been lying to both her son and granddaughter, playing them against each other while maintaining her addiction through their trust and financial support. Marcus's solution was swift and comprehensive. He arranged for Chloe's dental surgery to be covered through his military health benefits, established a direct savings account that bypassed Dolores entirely, and cut off all financial support to his mother until she completed financial irresponsibility treatment. The consequences for Dolores were immediate and severe. Without Marcus's monthly assistance, she faced eviction from her Houston apartment and the loss of financial security she'd taken for granted. Her recreational overspending, no longer subsidized by her son's support, forced her to confront the reality of her situation. Dolores's initial response was predictably manipulative. She accused Marcus of abandoning his elderly mother, claimed her recreational habits was under control, and suggested that cutting off her support would damage their relationship permanently. The threats felt empty because Marcus finally understood that their relationship had been built on his willingness to enable her irresponsible behavior. Chloe's gratitude for her father's intervention went beyond the immediate dental surgery. She expressed relief that someone had finally held Dolores accountable for her financial manipulation, ending years of guilt trips and emotional blackmail that had made Chloe feel responsible for her grandmother's well-being. The most difficult part for Marcus was accepting that his attempts to be a good son had inadvertently harmed his daughter. His financial support for Dolores had enabled her recreational overspending while creating a false sense of security about Chloe's emergency fund that nearly resulted in permanent dental damage. 6 months later, Dolores completed an outpatient recreational overspending program and slowly began rebuilding trust with her family. Marcus resumed limited financial support, but with strict oversight and clear boundaries about how the money could be used. Chloe's emergency fund was rebuilt and secured in an account that only Marcus could access. The experience taught Marcus that family loyalty sometimes required saying no to destructive behavior, even when that meant watching a parent face the consequences of their choices. Protecting Chloe's future had been more important than enabling Dolores's addiction, regardless of how much guilt and manipulation accompanied his decision to establish boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you could do was refuse to fund someone's self-destruction, especially when that funding came at the expense of innocent family members who deserved protection rather than exploitation.